Hey Married at First Sight fans, welcome back to the channel. My name is Shantia. So today we're doing another review for Married at First Sight. This is going to be for season 15, episode 5. Everything will be okay. Okay, so let me know if you guys want to in the comment section. Let me know how you felt about the episode. I'd appreciate it. So I'm just going to go ahead and have my phone here where I have the names, and we're going to start with Lindsey and Miguel. In this episode, the couples are on their honeymoon, and finally Morgan and Ben join the other couples. They're getting to know each other, and I think for the most part, they're deepening their intimate connections. They're understanding, they're having those serious conversations about kids, and they're also learning about each other in the sense like what works, what does not work for the other, one or the other. Okay, we are balanced. Very nice. Okay, so let me go ahead and get into the review, starting with Lindsey and Miguel. So Lindsey is 29, Miguel is 35. So the two of them are developing chemistry together. They're both attractive to one another. They're getting used to each other's energy. I think the thing that was really coming up for Miguel was, wanting to consummate the marriage. He said he's like perfectly fine with like just diving in because he feels like sexual compatibility is important for him to understand. However, I think like the main issue that's coming up is that Lindsey has quite like a specific idea about what she wants and how she wants to develop her intimacy, her physical intimacy with her partner, with her husband. And she feels like she wants to develop more of that connection. And here I'll just throw out my opinion. This is what this is about. My opinion when it comes to that is I think, yes, respect one another's view on, and maybe like find a compromise. But I think the other thing to it as well is honestly, men don't often realize this. They actually value people who value themselves enough to put it off longer. So that's just the thing. It's like a subtle conscious thing that we don't really think about. But I feel like men do. Subconsciously, they value when women wait. They value when their feminine counterpart waits, or when she has like a specific requirements that are needing to be met, because this is your wife. This is different, right? Versus just meeting someone you're attracted to and wanting to do the deed. So that's just my thing about them. They both seem very physically comfortable with one another. I think there's been an interesting back and forth emotionally between the two of them. In some kind of conversations that they've had. I think Lindsey said at one point that he seems a little bit cold in terms of developing his connections or his emotion with her, because he says he's attracted to her, but he says he still has to know her, and she doesn't really like that feeling. She's kind of feeling unsettled in I would say the emotional connection. I think they feel comfortable with each other, but I think she's wanting more from him, to be quite frank. I think Miguel, surprisingly, he seems relatively comfortable in the connection, in the partnership. He seems comfortable. And in spite of her, the yellow flags that he feel like he's noticed around Lindsey, he's still like, okay, let's get into this intimacy part, which I'm like, that's such a guy. Like, that's such a guy to say that. Other than that, I don't think there was anything that really came up between the two of them. I think Lindsey, she talked about wanting to get to know him. She's like, hey, I want to get to know you a little bit more and see who you are. When they're in the hot tub and they're having that discussion about, well, actually, yes, he ended up talking about his mother. He talked about how his mother was schizophrenic, and that disconnected her to him, or him to her, because he felt abandoned, then realized that his mother just had health issues. When it comes to Lindsey, they were in the tub and they were having that discussion about religion, and she was talking about her first romantic partner, who she was engaged to right after college. And she said that was the only person she loved in all of the years that she's been in connections with people. So she says it's very important for her. Like, when she's intimate with someone, she really wants to develop that connection with them. I think I talked about it in previous reviews. Just because you leave the religion doesn't mean you don't take the values with you. especially if it's a huge part of your being. Then Lindy also talked about her father and how he served her mother divorce papers when she was in 8th grade, and it created a lot of turmoil in the home. She ended up staying with a boyfriend, her boyfriend's parents, for I think like a month or something like that. It was interesting. But I think, just as she mentioned before when she was talking about wound mates and helpmates, that's the thing that came prominently to my mind when I was thinking about their partnership. I'm like, oh, okay, they both really have gone through quite a bit, and they both have seen the darker side. They've seen chaos. They've seen dysfunction. Now, what are they going to make of it moving forward into their partnership? Are they going to learn from it and grow from it, or they are going to repeat the patterns? So I feel a little skeptical, just because in the previews for the next episode, she just seemed like she was worrying a lot. Whereas I feel like Miguel, he just has such a calm nature about him. I don't think he's ever going to like totally freak out about something. I think his issue is maybe not really opening his heart enough. And I think that's what Lindy is worried about, is if he doesn't open his heart enough, he's a lot more closed off when it comes to making that connection and getting to that space of vulnerability. So that's just my thing with him. And then with her, you know, I always say you can't leave it for your partner to like be there to calm you. That's not why we get in partnerships. We don't get in partnerships so we're like, hey, I have all these flaws, can you fix them? No, the whole point is like so we can learn how to be more whole. We're never ever going to be whole, like complete, but you want to learn how to master yourself. So I'm like, if you want to get in a partnership, it's because you're mirroring each other and you can learn from each other and apply that to yourself. It's not my job to fix you. It's no one else's job to fix you. So I feel like that's not really the healthiest mindset to go into a partnership with, is expecting a partner to compensate for something that you lack. I'm like, why don't you just take care of that on your own? I'm like, that's, to me, you know, women always talk about being independent, right? To me, a real independent woman, it's about emotional control. Knowing how to, because a lot of women, I think they focus a lot on the material, right? When we refer to the title independent woman, they're like, okay, I got my business together, but I'm like, but do you have this together? Do you have this together? That's what an independent woman is like, know thyself. The true definition of a Virgo, I learned this a few weeks back, is a woman who owns herself. She takes care of herself on all levels. So that to me is a true definition of an independent woman. Take care of yourself on all levels. You want to attract a partner who can meet you there, because it's going to be such a healthy, abundant partnership versus, you know, being in a struggle partnership where it's like, okay, now we're having to figure things out. You know, that's why I'm like, why rush into a marriage or connection when you're not ready? You know, it's like, to me, like, this is a little bit of a rant. It's like, don't waste your time. If you're going to use your time to be single and to work on yourself, use that time to like really rejuvenate yourself on all levels, in all areas of life, where you feel really confident, really good in all areas of your life. To learn how to take care of yourself. Educate yourself. How do I take care of myself? Educate yourself on emotional control. Educate yourself on mental health and taking care of your mental health. It's all connected, and we need to take care of that. It's not about, I don't know, I think sometimes people get confused. They're like, well, I feel really good. I'm like, okay, you feel really good, but are you really good on all levels? Have you cultivated the tools? Let's say if dysfunction comes up in your partnership, have you cultivated the tools to know how to handle dysfunction and chaos? Should it come up in a partnership? Should it come up individually? Do you have what it takes? And I'm like, people sometimes they're missing out on like, what is the real education of what we're supposed to be working on? What are we actually supposed to be healing versus what you think is important? You know, it's nice to have a great career, but I'm like, without the emotional stability, you can't sustain a healthy partnership, period. Your relationship is going to be like this all the time. So yes, I'm ranting, and yes, it's because I'm frustrated, not with myself, but like sometimes when I see other people struggling, and I'm like, they're going through these patterns for decades, I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I gotta let that go. It's not for me to control. Okay, so moving on to our next couple, Kristin and Mitch. So as I was saying before, Kristin and Mitch are giving their relationship an honest effort. They really are. So Mitch decided to confess to Kristin, hey, I'm not really attracted to you in that sense. He said he was feeling bad because he's like, I did it for myself. I told her for myself versus actually, I don't really blame him because I felt like he was just honest. The thing is, it was going to hurt her one way or the other. That's not really something she could hide from. There's something about him, I've said it before, that comes off as quite boyish. And the fact that he has like 2 years max relationship experience as someone who's in his 40s, early 40s, I think is kind of like, it's not a red flag or anything, but it is, it's a note of concern because it's like, okay, we haven't been able to sustain anything real for a long period of time. And we've been in multiple partnerships. What's going on? Right? And to me, he just comes off as quite boyish. And I feel like Kristin is like the opposite. She's quite sophisticated. She knows herself. She knows how to communicate. She comes off as quite adult. And in fact, like a little bit more mature than I was, or older than her age, in a sense. I feel like she's used to just holding on and doing so much. Holding on, doing so much, used to being independent, but I'm like, girl, you know, I don't know. I'll get back to her later. So my thing with Mitch, so he told her that, and I wasn't mad at him either way. I didn't think, okay, he's bad for telling her that. I feel like you need to be honest. You need to be honest about the attraction. You need to be honest about, let me fix this pillow. You need to be honest about how you really feel about someone or with someone because you're in this journey together. I appreciated that because so many times on this show, there are guys and they do not communicate. They do not say what's going on. And I think he communicated in the best way that he could. So that's just a thing. What would have been the alternative? Lie and say I am attracted to you or not say anything at all? You know, the best thing is to just be honest. And the way you approach it, it really impacts the message and the delivery. So she was hurt, and I think she ended up crying, right? I didn't realize these were hanging out. These strings drive me crazy. But I think Kristin handled it as well as she could. So they had the awkward discussion. But she was very direct with him. She's like, okay, well, you know, that doesn't make me feel good, but at the same time, I shouldn't have to prove to you why I'm attractive. So I like that. I think she was standing her ground, understanding her worth as best as she could, acknowledging that. Later on, she was saying she was confused because she's like, okay, they're doing that. And then they're taking tequila shots, looking at the moon and eating chocolate-colored strawberries. They were eating that. So, like, my thing is, I feel like when you are present and when you pay attention, there is no confusion. That's just how I feel about it. I feel like when you're really paying attention to people, you're really paying attention to, what's going on, there is no confusion about your relationship. There is no confusion about what's going on. So I'm looking at Mitch and I'm like, he's not feeling it right now, right? It's taking him time to develop that physical chemistry. But I think honestly, he was just really in his head. And that's like the thing. Like he was really in his head. He was really in his head about what am I doing? And he was beating himself up. He was really frustrated. He was overwhelmed. What I appreciate about Mitch is he does come off as a very honest person. He seems very authentic. And Kristin is the same. So I feel like they're both a match in terms of they're both very honest people. So I think that's going to help them and aid them in their situation. Now, moving forward, I'm just like, it is a little bit forced, but I'm curious to see how things are going to unfold between the two of them. I do know towards the end of the episode, they actually did end up getting more physical with one another. And he was talking about, I have hormones. And yeah, I want to do that. So that's like the maturity thing to me when it comes to Mitch, because I'm like, okay, I understand you got hormones, but you can say no, right? We don't let our body or our hormones decide for us. Even Stasia said it. She's like, I don't want my body to decide. I want my heart to decide whether I want to move forward with this. So that's just my thing. I'm like, hormones, you don't let that guide you. So I think Kristin is just really confused when it comes to him putting the moves on her because he's listening to his body where she's listening to her mind and her heart about what's going on. And he's not doing that because I don't think he's really tried before to listen to that. So yeah, that's my thing. Okay, so moving on to our next couple, Alexis and Justin. So my echo likes to go off every time I say that name. So when it comes to Alexis, I think actually both of them. What I like about this couple is the vulnerability. You know, I like the romantic vibes. I like the vulnerability. It is a little too hot, too fast, too soon. But the thing is, you're on your honeymoon. You're married to this person. It accelerates all of the emotions. Of course, it's going to, like, if you are already attracted to them and you're vibing with them and you feel like this is your dream person, of course it's going to accelerate everything. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to go into fantasy land and to indulge in your emotions and in that connection. I think it's actually, to some degree, we don't do enough of that. You know, we're so focused on protecting our heart that we're not willing to be vulnerable all the time. And that's what I like about Justin. He's vulnerable, and I think Alexis too. She's like, it's fast, but I still feel connected to you. I still like you. And I really like I think we should all take notes on how they communicate their emotions. I really like how they communicate their emotions, talk about how they feel about each other. I like that Justin is all open and open book when it comes to his emotions. I think it's beautiful. I think for some people it could be overwhelming. Probably the majority of people, it would be a little bit overwhelming because it's like, whoa, it's a lot. But the thing is, he's feeling that because are you seeing the vibe between the two of them? It's like a dialogue. They're having a dialogue in their relationship. They're having a conversation. They're going back and forth. He's feeling more and more reassured and confident to talk about his feelings because she's leaning into him. She's giving to him energetically, through her communication, through her body language. She's just, she's in dialogue with him and he's feeding off of that dialogue. So I'm like, you know what, Alexis, girl, I can see how you got those 3 proposals because you have this ability to make people feel quite naturally very comfortable with you, with your energy. And a lot of that has to do with her natural radiance. She is just very naturally comfortable with herself and very feminine, very magnetic. And also, yes, like magnetic, when you're like very feminine, very magnetic, you radiate beauty from the inside out. It actually makes you just naturally quite beautiful. So that's what's working for her, and that's what's working for her and Justin. It's moving fast. He told her, I love you. What do I think about that? I think when you feel it, you feel it. Real love to me it's not that he's like, I'm in love with you and I love you. Actually, you are in love with her. I don't think you really love her because the real love comes when you put in the work, right? The real love comes when you put in work. You can say I love you, but the real love comes when you put in the work. I don't know. I think, I feel like if you feel it, say it, don't hold back because sometimes you don't know. You don't know how much time you have on this earth. Sometimes we're in our heads too much about the perfect timing. And I feel like if you just say it when it feels natural to you, it's a beautiful feeling. I think love, sometimes we get in our heads too much about this idea of love and we make it out to be this big grand thing. But love is actually quite simple and it's all encompassing. And we don't allow ourselves to indulge enough in the emotion and the feeling. I think it's perfectly fine to love someone you've only known for 3 days. I think that's perfectly fine. I think, you think about kids, you think about dogs, right? They're totally open. They're totally vulnerable in that sense where they're just like, yeah, I love you. What? I do. And that's great. And it feels great. It's when we don't get the reciprocal, when we're not on the receiving end of it, or we're not receiving back, or we get in our heads about receiving. I think love is about giving. I think it really is about giving. There's a receive and give. There is a reciprocal, but I think love, give it when you want to, because we're so stuck in keeping things contained. And I'm like, oh, I only love you, but I don't love you. Like, why don't we just have love for all people? The degree of the love varies according to the depth of the partnership and who and the commitment and the devotion and the experiences, the depth of the love differs. But I think love in general is just something we don't say enough of. Period. So that's just my thing about the word love. Alexis, yes. So she said, I'm not going to say it back. She was very direct. She was just like, no, I'm not going to say it back. I think that's perfectly fine. And I think I appreciate his vulnerability in understanding that there was no promise in her returning that back to him. This is too soon. He said he feels it in the way that she looks at him and touches him and all those things. So I'm like, if he feels it, that's great. Good for him. And she's like, I know he loves me. So it's accelerated emotions. Eventually, they're really going to get to know. I think, here's what I'm going to say about love. I think it's perfectly fine to say love whenever you feel like it. But I think it's also important to acknowledge there's different levels to it. And I think you should also be very vocal and verbalize the difference. Like, I love you right now because I feel good around you. That's level 1. And then it could be, I love you because you've been there for me. That's level 2. I love you because you have been a light in my life. That's level 3. You know, there's different levels to it. So I think it's important to acknowledge that. All right, so I'm happy for Justin and Alexis. I think they're very cute together, very connected. I like to see romance. I like to see when people are open and vulnerable. It teaches more about how we can be more open and vulnerable. We close ourselves off so much. So, and the thing is, like, the minute something goes wrong, we're just like, we clam up. And I think that might be what happens with them. It's like the minute something goes wrong, now I can't give that love. I'm like, why not? You know, I think it's when you close yourself off, that's the painful part. When you close yourself off to receiving love and opening yourself up to new connections, that hurts more than, yeah, lost my train of thought. Okay, so we're going to move on to Stasi and Nate. So Stasi and Nate are definitely attracted to each other, feeling the chemistry. Nate's immaturity is coming through, though. His immaturity is coming through. When they went on the bike ride, he did exactly what Stasia was like hoping he wouldn't do. He didn't leave her behind. She lost him because he stayed behind because he was trying to take a selfie and take photos. And just being immature, she was very direct, and she talked to him about it. I like the way she communicated about it. Someone else was saying that, hey, you know, maybe she should let things go. People are allowed to make mistakes. But I'm like, it's a little different because this is Married at First Sight. It's accelerated. I think you should just nip it in the bud and just say, hey, I felt like you were not there for me. It'd be one thing if she said he wasn't there for me and then she closed herself off. But she said, hey, you weren't there for me. Let's do better. So I thought that was fine that she said that. I think Nate is needing to mature in that sense. I think they're cute together. They're giving me boyfriend and girlfriend vibes. Like natural boyfriend and girlfriend vibes. They're attracted to each other. They like each other. Whether they will sustain, who knows? Was there anything else that came up between the two of them that I noticed? Well, when it comes to the intimacy, the physical intimacy, she said she wanted to wait. She wanted to wait for her heart to be open, her heart to be ready. Nate wants to just dive in. Very much a guy thing to say. No surprise there. What else is there to say? I don't know. I guess the only thing I'm questioning is whether he can handle her. He can handle her. He can be at her mature level. Because right now I'm feeling like she has to mother him. And that's like the thing, like even if someone is like in a mature place, Stassi is very mature. Like she's gone through, she's done it, she's experienced relationships, she's building her business. And the discussion that they had was about children. All right, she's ready now. And this is why I always say, like, you have to be very intentional about who you partner with if you're ready for kids now. Because someone who's like, a guy who's 33 could easily be like, no, I'll just put it off. He could put it off for 10 years if he really wanted to. But her body, you know, at 37, no, she can't put it off for 10 years. She can't wait forever. He said 2 to 3 years. Realistically, that would probably be healthy, she said, in 1 year. You know, physically, realistically, that's what she wants. She said she's committed. She said she's devoted to him. She said, hey, she took on his name. Why not? She also talked about, she was vulnerable about her disconnection to her father, not knowing her father. I thought that was really deep and very, yeah. I think her and Nate can, it's crazy. Their background is like exactly the same in that sense because he's not close with his mother. But my concern is his age because he can easily put off and say, oh, I'm not ready for kids now. But I'm like, but that's my thing. It's like, that's why you want to, especially if you're ready for a family, you want to date older. You want to date someone who's in that mature stage where they're ready for kids today, yesterday. Because then you don't have to wait for that. So that's just only, that's like real discussions that need to be had. And then the other thing that came up was the bankruptcy. And she was talking about a note, like it's not a prenup, but it's a note up. I don't know what it's called. A note up. She was talking about how she wanted to sign some papers to protect her finances. And I'm like, yes, girl. Yes. Smart. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish with our final couple, Morgan and Ben. So Morgan and Ben arrived from their wedding. It looks, honestly, I'm not really feeling the two of them together, but I think I do like them as people. I think they're cute. I like them as people. I think Morgan, she expressed that she was attracted to him. She, on his 30th birthday, the day after their wedding, she made him like these cupcakes and gave it to him. I thought that was so sweet. That was very thoughtful. In one of the after parties, she was talking about how she's an alpha female and she didn't feel like Ben was an alpha male. And so she usually dates alpha males and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so I want to talk about this alpha thing, which I think is interesting. Because this also came up for a discussion when it came to Justin and his vulnerability and masculinity and toughness and like, can men cry? I don't know. There's like multiple discussions I think that could be had there. Our understanding, our interpretation of alpha, whatever that means, is interesting. I think what people really mean when they say alpha, right? There's like an intensity or there's an intense energy. There's a confidence there. There's a power there. There's a strength, right? She's saying, I'm a strong woman. Is he a strong man? I think we need to redefine what this strong is, right? Or even like the tough, rough, manly man. We need to redefine that. It all depends on what you're attracted to. So on a primal level, maybe you're more attracted to someone who is a little more rough around the edges and maybe is less vulnerable. What I think is important at the core is for a man to be able to handle his emotions, to be emotional mature. Actually, for both parties, man or woman. But that's what you want. It's like, okay, he can be vulnerable, he can show his emotions, but you want him to be able to keep himself together. And you want him to be a pillar of strength, especially when it comes to your union and your family. Right? If you guys need to, in our, like, if we were to speak about it in primal terms, right? Why do we want men to be like the tough, like manly man, alpha male? It's because we want them to be protective. We want them to protect the tribe. We want them to protect us. We want them to be valuable to us in that sense where they can aid us in giving us their protection. So that's what we're looking for, right? Not this, he looks like an alpha male, he acts like an alpha male. Like, a guy could be an alpha male and not take care of his family, not pay the bills. And I'm like, as far as I'm concerned, in this modern world, that's what's important. Emotional maturity. Does he take care and protect his family? And also, I'm like, another thing, it might be an advantage if, you feel like you're a strong woman to be with someone who can complement you. Because if we have two strong energies coming together, we might actually, come up against one another. So either we need to know how to create a dance with one another, or complement each other in a way that is beneficial. So the other thing, my other argument is she called herself an alpha female. So I think you know, this discussion comes up a lot where it's like, are we as women, we have to be strong, right? We have to be strong in this day and age, right? I was having a discussion with my dad and it was so interesting. He was talking about like, we're going through a renaissance. He's like, women are taking the reins over their life. And I would have to agree. Women are taking the reign over their life, but this is my understanding of how things work. People say men have always run this world. I'm like, this has always been a man and woman's world. It's just that women are shifting the dynamic because they're understanding their power. That's the difference. We've always had power, and we've always had a lot of power in our femininity. It's like there's actually a lot of power in passivity, right? We don't necessarily have to take a lot of action like men do, and we most certainly should not, because it's going to wear us out. There's power to be found in your femininity as a woman. So my thing is like, be powerful in embracing your femininity. Don't neglect your femininity. Try to become a man and develop power in that sense when it doesn't feel natural. We have masculine attributes to us, but we're not men. So I'm not going to tap into all of my masculine energy to build my power. I'm like, no, I have masculine qualities about me, but I also have feminine. I'm dominant feminine qualities that I'm going to tap into to build my power. So I'm like, as far as being a strong woman goes, I feel like if you identify with being a feminine, you should be building those strengths, your feminine strengths and qualities, and believing in that. And the reason why women didn't have a lot of the power is because they started to pay attention to too much to the outer, right? It's like, oh, if he's running the country or whatever, he's taking charge and he's doing this and he's telling everyone what to do, well, I have no control. I'm like, it's a belief system. There are so many women who are actually have the ability to be in healthy partnerships who do not claim their power. And it creates so much chaos in their relationships because they don't own their power as women. And they say, oh, it's the men's fault. He's taking over. I'm like, did you own your power? Did you communicate? Did you learn how to own your emotions? Did you learn emotional control? Because I'm like, if you owned all of those parts of yourself, then you would understand that you have an infinite amount of power as a woman. It's about knowing how to use it. And I feel like that's the renaissance we're going through, knowing how to use our power as women. It's about how to use it. It's always been there, but do you know how to access it? And the gods, the goddesses, like if you look into ancient history, if you look into the biblical stories, women understood their power, right? They understood their power. And even after, let's say, things have been recorded in history, women have been recorded out of history. If you look even further back, they honored their women. They honored their goddesses because they understood that there is power in the feminine. There is power in the feminine. They honored them just as much as they honored their masculines. And then it just got written out of and forgotten in history. So we're having to recover and acknowledge all of these women in history again. But another thing to remember is men started to become the dominant, educated, knowledgeable people in history. So they're the ones who are writing about history, which means it's not that they're trying to write women out of history. They were writing about themselves. And I did this in a speech a year ago where I talked about men just write about themselves. If you as a woman want to be written in history, write about yourself. Write a book, create a book, record a book, acknowledging all of the women in your life, all of the tribal sisters. Men just wrote about themselves. So women have to do the same thing in order for them to acknowledge their lineage as well. All right, I'm just in like rant mood today, sorry. But I just think this information is so important. And I think we need to like re-educate ourselves on how our energy works, how our power works, how we create healthy dynamic partnerships, what we actually have to do to put in the work to build a real healthy partnership. Okay, Morgan and Ben. That's just my thing about the alpha female. I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? Let me see. Like my other thing is, you do want him to be chivalrous. You want him to be attentive to you. You need to look for all those qualities. Also, sometimes men do have to be re-educated, and they can be re-educated in terms of you just communicating to them, just like Stasi and Nate, letting them know, hey, this is how you treat a woman. Sometimes they don't know because they're not educated or they're not given examples. They're not shown, how do I treat a woman? How do I really treat a woman? So it's about knowing what your worth is, knowing what you deserve, and knowing how to communicate that to him. And most importantly, treating yourself with utmost worth, respect, and royalty, because the way you treat yourself is how other people treat you, and it's how your partner is going to treat you. There we go. Morgan and Ben are cute together. They're building up the chemistry. I think she's definitely attracted to him. She said she wanted to jump on him or something. But they're still getting to know each other. It's still in the beginning stages. And that is all I have to say about the two of them. That is the end of my review. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you guys enjoyed those rants. And I will see you guys next week for another review for Married at First Sight. Like, subscribe, and support the channel.